ASEAN, officially the Association of South Asian Nations, is an economic union comprising 10 member states in Southeast Asia, with some of the fastest growing economies in the world. ASEAN has broadened its objectives beyond the economy and social sphere. As of July 2019, the population of ASEAN was approximately 60 million people, which is about 9% of the world population. While Singapore is leading a lot of investments and innovation and technologies, the other countries such as Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand in ASEAN are also driving active investments in startup scene. With 17 unicorns as of April 2021, I would say there's a lot more to be done. Today with me in the Expert Insight session is Giulia, Director Strategy and Partnership, Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. Giulia works closely with ASEAN Secretariat, ASEAN plus 6 countries, and the regional and international dialogue partners to support socio-economic integration and developments in Southeast Asia. We are going to discuss some of the key challenges to drive innovation ecosystem, entrepreneurship, technological transformation, and most importantly, how to address the skills gap to drive the innovation and the digital economy, and also to support MSME. But before we go deep dive on these topics, let's learn a bit more about your background, Giulia. So first of all, welcome to All Things Connected Expert Insight session. So could you briefly share a bit of your background, how and why you end up in this role?
Thank you very much, CK, for this very nice introduction. And it's really a great pleasure to be here and participate in this expert series conversation. My name is Giulia Ajmone Marsan, and I work for ERIA, which means Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. It's an international governmental organization with 16 member countries, so the 10 ASEAN countries and the so-called plus 6. This is Japan, South Korea, China, India, New Zealand, and Australia. We work closely with these countries to support with analytical and strategic inputs the process of socioeconomic integration at ASEAN level, ASEAN and actually beyond. We also very much look at East Asia and the dialogue partners. And how we do that? We do that by collaborating with key stakeholders in the region. We work a lot, for instance, with colleagues at the ASEAN Secretariat and also with policymakers in the countries I was just mentioning before. But we also want to work in a very collaborative way, and this is why I really like the name All Things Connected, because even in my job, things are very much connected. So we keep the dialogue open with the business sector, different types of businesses, multinational enterprises, but also MSMEs with a more traditional business model or very innovative ones, nascent, vibrant startups too. And also we work very much and we want to talk also with higher education, training, and vocational education organization and institutions, because they are such a very important actor in innovation ecosystems and obviously for anything related to skills development, as CK was mentioning at the beginning. Very briefly, let me just, because you also asked me about how I got there, throughout my entire career, I've been working in international governmental organization. Now at ERIA, this organization based in Jakarta. Before I was based in Paris, working for another international organization called OECD. It means Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, where I was also very much looking at entrepreneurship, innovation, and policies to support ecosystem development. And before that, even if my title often has been economist or something along those lines, I actually studied mathematics first and then economics and complex systems. So I had a very interdisciplinary background, which I think is something that helped me tremendously in my career, especially to understand emerging trends and innovation. So back to you, CK.
Thank you so much. Very interesting profile, both by education as well as work, and also quite a spread of geography, which you are kind of managing at ERIA from ASEAN plus 6 countries, and as well as working with as you said, working with early stage startups, academia, as well as policymakers. So when you have a discussion with senior leaders, maybe for enterprises or government agencies, as well as MSMEs, and as we discussed before, we started the session about digital transformation industry 4.0. What are the primary challenges you see for them to adopt these topics? And more importantly, how can they accelerate? What do you see what becomes their key challenges? Technology is there, we know technology is there today, but why there's still not so much of adoption in your view?
Okay, so there are obviously many challenges that depend very much about the type of business you are, I mean, where you are located. So sometimes it's difficult to generalize, but let me try to give you an answer. I mean, many people talk about barriers like regulatory barriers, for instance, different standards across different countries, or lack of access to finance. I mean, especially for MSMEs, they may not have the resources to invest in technology adoption. These are certainly very important barriers. But I really believe that the key barriers remain the ones around skills, mindsets, and motivations. So as you said, CK, the technology is there. Yes, there are the barriers I was mentioning before, but it's very much about mindset. So, I mean, any company from the largest one to the smallest one, the better equipped, the least equipped, I mean, it's really about having, leaders that have this mindset to be innovative, to understand the potential and opportunities and even the risks coming from, emerging digital technologies, and find a way to adopt them and embrace them in their business model. So we started by talking about skills. I really think that skills and mindsets are really at the essence of overcoming these kind of challenges. I hope that provides an answer to your question.
Yeah, so certainly this is one of the key gaps which we also see. But the large organizations who have the money and the muscle to transform, and they can invest a lot of money in this kind of initiative, and I've seen personally myself with a lot of such companies, and they can afford to fail as well. And I've seen a lot of such initiative close down, and companies burn millions and millions of dollars. But if you look at the bigger chunk of the economy, which is the MSME sector, the smaller companies, and not just in the developing countries where we deal in ASEAN, but even in Singapore, I can tell you, they're slow to adopt the small sectors. Though there is a lot of initiatives from government, from academia, trying to kind of put together some programs, yet the smaller sector, as we know, always deal with the problem of tomorrow, the numbers towards the month. So while one of the gap which we both, I think, have mentioned is the skills gap. So in your view, these particularly the smaller companies, I would say MSMEs, how can they identify the right digital skills, if I would say, to lead the initiatives? Because like I said, these companies are pretty much either family businesses or maybe in the range of $100 to $100 million businesses, not much. So what can they do when they're building up the digitalization initiative in terms of the skills? And how can they analyze the skills gap and map those gaps across their small organization? Any thoughts on that when you have been discussing with the MSMEs in this region?
Let me start by addressing, let's say, the first part of the question. Obviously, there are many things that small companies can do, and I will cover that in a minute. But there are many things that all other actors of the ecosystem can actually do to support small companies. And this is why in every country around the world, from the most developed to the least developed, most of government support when it comes to skill development for businesses, it's actually dedicated and devoted to micro and medium small enterprises. Obviously, as CK you mentioned, often very large corporations, they already have the skills to retrain their staff, their resources, the time, the budget. This is not the case for very small traditional MSMEs. And this is why you mentioned Singapore. Singapore is a leading global example, of a country where the government is doing many, many interesting and innovative programs, implementing programs to support skill development, especially in the MSME sectors. But more generally, even countries with less resources than Singapore, they have all generally programs to support skill development in the MSME sector. This is something that we are observing very much also at ASEAN level. Skill development in the MSME sector is one of the priority for ASEAN as a region before and post-pandemic. There's a document called the ASEAN Comprehensive Economic Recovery Framework, and skill development for MSMEs for the post-pandemic recovery to embrace, the digital revolution is very much at the core of this strategic plan. So there are many policies around. So the government and policymakers have definitely a role to play. And I mean, I was mentioning it before. I mean, also training and education institutions have definitely a role to play. I mean, that is, for instance, go beyond a little bit, the ivory tower model, and beyond training just students, try to be in touch with the business sector, including micro and small medium enterprises, to develop training programs that could actually benefit different types, different ranges of entrepreneurs. You were also asking about the right digital skills. I am not sure that such a thing exists. I mean, whether there is something called the right digital skills. Obviously, it very much depends on the type of company you are. I mean, for more traditional companies in a rural area, the right digital skill could be able to learn how to do marketing through Instagram or Facebook, or another digital platform. For other companies that are much more technology intensive, it could be something much more sophisticated related to artificial intelligence on the Internet of Things. This is to say that depending on the type of business you are, the type of digital skills that could be right for you could be very different. But something I really believe in is that we also need to go a little bit beyond, the narrowly defined digital skills. Sometimes when people talk about digital skills, they only think about coding or, programming something. I think we need to start thinking about digital skills in a more holistic way. Because beyond, coding, we also need to understand and think about, the social, ethical, privacy implications of the digital economy, the digital technologies we are developing and using. And I really believe that to thrive and become a good innovator, a combination of these two different skill sets is somehow very much needed. That doesn't mean that all of us need to be, philosopher, ethicists, and fantastic programmers, but it means that depending on our role, we, may need to know a little bit of this, a little bit of that, maybe, in different percentages and, according to different recipes. But I really think that this is becoming, a very, very much needed skill set for the future, for business leader, for people, analysts like me, people working in the government sector, educators and trainers. This is something incredibly important for the future.
Yeah, it makes sense. You mentioned a couple of points which I was listening carefully. As you said, how to define the digital skills. Is it like posting Instagram or writing some AI algorithms? So depend on the organization, at least if they know what digital skills they need. And also to add to your point, which I agree, and I also kind of promote and advocate, it's not just about coding. For me, more importantly is how to connect the dots. For example, I'm a faculty, invited faculty in 2 universities in Singapore on same topic of IoT and digital transformation. And when I was discussing with the faculty management team that I told them I'm not going to teach how to code Python programming. Kids can learn from YouTube. That's not a big thing in today's world on learning coding. But what I want to focus here is how to think from architecture point of view, how to think from defining the problem point of view, how to think from workflow point of view. What language you use to code, what technology you use to build the solution, there's a secondary part. Because I see this huge gap that a lot of companies are going after such technology program, which is, yes, it is good, but they still miss how to connect the dot. Like we were discussing that if you're talking about a solution for factory, we need to think about why we need a solution first of all. Process design point of view, from problem definition point of view, from data strategy point of view. So we need to look at very holistically these skills. But at the same time, another challenge which I see when I talk to the, again, senior leaders as well as academia, there are tons of programs out there, right? So hopefully to churn out AI engineers, data scientists, but not everybody needs, as you said, the same level of capabilities on this topic, for example, AI and ML, right? So let's say a manufacturing company in Indonesia looking to digitally transform itself and looking to add these skills of AI and ML in its team. So do they need the AI ML skills of an individual who work for Google, Microsoft? Maybe not, but maybe at least the AI ML level of skills that once those predictive or prescriptive maintenance solutions are deployed in the plant, they can manage it, at least those solutions, have a conversation with the vendors. But at the same time, like I said, I haven't come across personally, if I'm missing somewhere, a kind of framework or as a thought process that how these organizations, first, what skills they need, first of all, then how much skills they need for the particular role to accelerate the digital transformation journey, and also infuse other topic, like you said, innovation, entrepreneurship, cultural growth mindset. And there are limited resources. These small companies have limited resources. So how can they also build the kind of a team structure and the culture to drive this internal, external collaboration? So whether within your current organizations or your collaboration with other agencies, have you come across any such initiative, which I think will be very helpful for companies? To repeat myself, what skills should they need and how much skills they need in their respective organization? How can they go about it?
Well, again, I mean, I think that it very much depends on the type of business you are. But beyond that, there are, let's say, some common issues and trends. We live in a world that is becoming increasingly unpredictable. I mean, I think that we have lots of examples of, why and how. So I think it's really important for a business leader, entrepreneurs, any type of entrepreneur you might be, to develop not only an agile and lean structure, as you mentioned, but also a company with this culture of learning. So it's really important for all of us. I mean, people doing, I'm not an entrepreneur, but I mean, for people doing my job, for entrepreneurs, startuppers, policymakers, to really be able to develop what I think is the most skill of all, that is learn to learn. I mean, we are no longer in a time where, you go to school or university and then that's it. You just learn how to code a specific, program or tool. I mean, very soon these will become obsolete. So we really need to be able to develop these skills to be able to constantly learn and update the knowledge that we are acquiring. This is, in my opinion, absolutely crucial. This is something that, again, business leader can incentivize by, developing this kind of learning mindset and also creating a good culture within an organization, allowing a little bit of, time to employees to, to learn, to upgrade their skills, going on to do different experiences and take classes. But again, it's for all of us, even, beyond the business sector. I think this is really extremely important. And that also means that together with business leaders, policymakers need to think about how to update and redefine also education system to really equip students, people going back to school and education for additional training, to develop this mindset and skills very much about learning how to learn.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on the same term, which I use also very often, that what we need in this time is today is learn how to learn. And I also, I dedicate my time to every day learn something, whether through YouTube, for example, or more importantly, actually, I learn more by talking to people like yourself. I think that's one of the dedicated activities I do regularly, to talk to the experts. And not, like I said, expert is not just necessary have to be a senior person of 20-year experience. It could be just young professional. I talked to, for example, a couple of startups which I discussed with, either for angel investment or some of those other activities. Those young professionals who are like maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 years younger to me, they come with a lot of such innovative ideas which help me to also find out something new. So I think that's very critical to have this culture of growth mindset and learn how to learn in this world. And one thing which we advocate as a company, also as well as a community, is we advocate, we call it a total ecosystem value. And what I mean by that, when we drive this industry 4.0 or X.0, for example, all things connected has certain value. Company A has certain value, company B has certain value. But to drive certain thing, we need all three together to complete those objectives. So in this kind of initiative where various stakeholders, big, small, together have to solve the gaps. And as you mentioned in your introduction, that you work with quite a number of such organizations and stakeholders. So could you give us some examples? How does ERIA drive such collaboration in accelerating these initiatives?
Yeah, I mean, collaboration for us is really essential. Is really, something extremely important, because we want to be a knowledge broker, a convening platform. When we want to support policymakers to, develop some new strategic thinking about a policy area, we really need to reach out different type of stakeholders, listen to them, and get different points of view to try to be as comprehensive as possible, and trying to understand what are the different incentives in the game. So we typically engage in discussions and conversation with people, leaders. I'm saying leaders, but actually it's people also often with a very different ages. As you mentioned, sometimes you learn a lot from a very young colleague or someone that was just born in a different time, because their mindset is different. So for us, diversity is also very important. Diversity in terms of ages, gender, geographical background, because that allow us to digest and understand different perspectives. So typically, whenever we are doing an analytical project or also some form of policy dialogue to support policymakers, we put people with different backgrounds around the same table. It could be physical or virtual. I mean, lately, it's very much more virtual than physical. And we engage in discussion and conversation to understand. Sometimes we can also change our minds, because we can just understand that what we were thinking until 1 hour before was not fully accurate. So it's really our bread and butter. And I was mentioning, business leaders, policymakers, leaders from education and training institutions, but we also collaborate very much with other international organizations. It could be in some cases some UN agencies, or the Asian Development Bank, many other peers that are very knowledgeable in different policy areas, from whom we want to learn, and we also want to bring our contribution. But even for us, not only for the business sector, collaboration is really at the core of innovation and this mindset for growth and continuous development. So it's something that is really, really important for us.
Right. So as I mentioned that I do quite closely work with startup communities and the tech communities. So if I want to go back to them and tell about ERIA, that hey, this is ERIA, this is where three areas ERIA can support. So what those 3 or 4 focus area would be, and then how does such support for startups or collaboration work? Any examples? What should I give the message to them?
I think that, lately we have been quite active in trying to get and analyze trends about innovation, startups, and entrepreneurship, predominantly, across ASEAN and East Asia. So I think that, they can look at us as an organization that is providing a lot of different points of view from other entrepreneurs and startuppers. Sometimes, an entrepreneur or a startupper can watch one of our webinars, or one of our YouTube recordings, or read one of our policy briefs, and just say, oh, okay, other people are exactly, in the same shoes or in the same situation where I am. Or on the contrary, this guy is saying something particularly interesting. Perhaps, I'm learning something new. So we are a knowledge provider organization. Again, many things we do are actually mostly for policymakers, but we very much use the point of view of startups and the business sector to provide inputs for policymakers so that, they can actually develop better and more accurate strategies. And we are kind of also building a community of entrepreneurs, the ones that we have been engaging with throughout the webinar series of last year and then this year, and our different virtual or hopefully soon some physical events. So we really hope that we could expand, these networks and connections, and we would be very happy to, connect and liaise with the different people from the region.
Yeah, wonderful. And I can see also that this is where we could also collaborate and support and maybe host some of the sessions together, because we have quite a good access and outreach of these tech communities, at least in terms of startups. And also there are quite a venture groups part of these initiatives. So maybe we should discuss how can we drive those collaboration. To summarize, I think it was a very interesting discussion, Giulia, as we discussed digital transformation, Industry 4.0, whatever term we want to call. It depends on the mindset, first of all. Whether it's a big company or small company, yes, there are challenges of bigger company of their own challenges, and the small company have their own challenges. In bigger companies, when I talk to them, sometimes they have two extremes, which I call. One is pseudo innovation, sometimes I call, that we spend a lot of time, money on a lot of PR marketing stuff, but we don't get anywhere. We think we are doing innovation, but we are not actually. So that's pseudo mindset innovations. Then second is no innovation, because they have to deal every month after month to get the business. So either extremes are not good, which is basically the vicious cycles of pseudo innovation and no innovation. So we do have to inject some catalyst, we call, to drive a bit of stability if there's too much of pseudo innovation, and drive some dynamism culture if there's no innovation. Same thing goes with the smaller companies also. So they have challenges of budget, skills, and money. But I think all of this could be addressed if we have the right skills, the right team, and then we will be able to drive it. This is where I see personally the gap, and I'm sure we will continue to discuss on this topic as the time comes. As mentioned, the All Things Connected also work with organizations to first understand the digitalization roadmap, where they want to do, what they want to do. And then we align the skills map, basically, that, okay, in next 5 years, this is where you want to be from current state to the future state. So digital transformation, your state looks like this, but how the organization structure, the team structure should look like, the skills gap is also, we need to map it. So I think it was a wonderful discussion, Giulia. I appreciate your time with us. Thanks for sharing insight. And I'm sure those who will watch this discussion will surely reach out to you as well. So look out for some of the people reaching out to you for further discussion and potentially some collaboration with ERIA. Any last comments before we wrap up the session for today?
Simply thank you. Thank you very much, CK. It has been a great pleasure to be connected with you and your community. And as you said, this is certainly a conversation that needs to be continued. So thank you very much.